So how many people here have like a basic understanding of music theory? Just raise your hand. Okay, I'll breeze through this. Hey, hi, my name is Per, and today I'm going to be giving you a presentation about popular music, and I'll explain what that means. So, for my senior seminar presentation, I wanted to do something a bit more unique, and so I decided that I could use my knowledge of computer science and economics to complement my music major and do something that a lot of music researchers often can't do because they don't have the technical skill set. So what I did was I took a wealth of data that's available if you know how to access it using programming, and I analyzed it. So this data set is 80 years, the Billboard charts week by week, so the Billboard shows the top pop music charts from 1940 to 2016. So I took all of this data week by week, all the top songs, and so I analyzed it for all sorts of different metrics, and I'll explain all those things. So these were my research methods: gather, store, visualize, analyze, and I'll go into depth as to what I did for each one. So the first step is that you have to get every single song from 1940 week by week, going all the way through. So normally this would be really hard for somebody to do if you didn't have any computer science background or anything at all. Like, you have to go to this really hideous website, click this next button, one by one, and go week by week since 1940s. It would be nearly impossible for you to do. But if you have a knowledge of programming, you can do this technique called web scraping, where you simply write a program, it goes through and looks at the website, it takes all this data, and then stores it. So very easy. I just have to write the code and let it go. So then, gathering the metadata, which is just data about the songs in detail, I use these services. So the Echo Nest, Music Match, and Microsoft all provide an API, which is simply a way of searching, but you use programming to do it. The Echo Nest allows for things like duration of the song and how happy or sad it sounds. Music Matches for lyrics, and Microsoft has a sentiment analyzer, which analyzes the lyrics for positivity or negativity, and I'll explain all that. So we also have to store this data, right? So when you're working with 50, 60,000 points of data, how do you store that? You can't put it in an Excel spreadsheet, right? That'd be nuts. Like, you couldn't possibly work with that. Not to mention that it'd be across 30 different dimensions. So your computer would probably just crash if you tried to do something like that. So you need some technical knowledge to solve that problem, and in this case, it would be using a database. So this is what a database schema looks like. Essentially, you organize your data into these essentially file cabinets, and you link all the file cabinets together, is the best way I can describe that. And so doing this, you get a lot of benefits. They're designed to store large amounts of data, and you can quickly query them using a special language. Also, a lot of services connect to the database really easily too. So after 1 week of data collection, I had almost 12,000 artists, 35,000 tracks, and 348,000 data points. So that's a lot of data to sift through. So these are just the data fields. I won't explain each one in depth unless I'm actually using it. But you can see some of them are subjective, like, for example, danceability. Like, what does that mean, right? But you can use machine learning to model this, okay? So you can teach a computer what it means for a song to be danceable, and then it'll actually tell you, it'll learn on its own. So it's true, okay, believe me. So finally, to visualize, I use this business intelligence tool called Tableau, which is a really quick and easy way to, well, I don't know if it's easy, but it's a quicker way than Excel to quickly visualize highly dimensional data. So let's just get straight to the analysis. So this is our first chart that we're going to look at. So all the charts go from 1940 all the way to 2016. So this is acousticness. So what does acousticness mean? Simply how much electronics are being used in a given song. So this is an average score. So the higher to 1 you get, the more acoustic the song is. So if you're just only using drums and guitars with no electronic distortions, then it would be closer to a 1, and then closer to 0 if it was made completely in a computer. Okay? So we can see something that we should expect, right? 1940s, when jazz was really prevalent, there weren't really much electronics to be used at all, so you have very little, you have very high acousticness rate. Okay? This goes down over time, of course, as we get more and more electronics, but interesting to note is that it actually plateaus around 1980, right? So we have the ability to make 100% electronic music inside of a computer, but the Billboard charts show that people actually do not prefer 100%, distorted, like inside a computer sound, right? Maybe people just haven't gotten to that point yet where they can, grasp it or enjoy it, but there's also people like a human element in their music as well. So this shows, and this is a bit more of the music theory-ish part. I'll just breeze through this, okay? So this is key popularity globally, so total. So C is the most popular key, and it goes down this way. How many of you guys have any knowledge of keys at all? Okay, that's decent. Okay, so there's a pattern here. It goes down, it goes up in accidentals, so no accidentals. C has no sharps, no flats. And then we go to G, which is 1 sharp, 2 sharps, 3 sharps, and then we go to 1 flat. But then we get to C sharp, which completely throws the pattern off. And by talking to people who play guitar, you see that the pattern is thrown off because guitar players use a capo and they shift the key of the instrument up 1/2 step. Okay, so this chart actually shows that the instrument you're using to compose actually plays a significant factor in the keys that people use. So this is the same thing for minor, and this was interesting because you would expect A minor to be the top one because it's the relative to C, but that's not the case. So we can actually do some splitting of the data to figure out why that is. So if we take the second half of the 20th century, right, into the 21st century, we can see that A, which we'd expect to be up here, falls very low, okay? And this is because of guitars, once again, because guitars were used way more in the second half of the 20th century than the first half. And to prove this even further, we can look at the first half of the 20th century and see that A goes way up within a margin of error of the key of F minor. So we conclude that that the guitars play a prevalent role in key choice. Okay, so yeah, so this is crazy, but this shows each one of these lines is a different genre, okay? And this chart shows each genre sort of go up and go down as genres do, right? So this blue line is jazz, okay? So we can see in the 1940s, jazz had almost 100% of the charts, okay? Quickly dropping, okay? Just as we'd expect. But there's also some other little things that we can see if we look closer, okay? This tiny, tiny red line that you guys see here, that's actually disco, okay? So we can see disco's meteoric rise from around 1975 to 1980, but it quickly drops off, just out of nowhere. And none of these other genres have that kind of, that kind of stop. When they reach around 15% share, they just suddenly disappear off the face of the earth. But we can actually go back and confirm a theory that people have. Just colloquially, people talk about the day that disco died. Okay, and there was an event called Disco Demolition Day in 1979. Okay, and this event, people went to this ballpark and took all their disco records, and it was highly publicized. 50,000 people went to this baseball game, and they blew up their records in the middle of the stadium. Okay, and people rushed on the field and were super hyped about this, and that's when disco died. So we can confirm that that's exactly the time period where it did, and nothing else has that kind of pattern. We can also see rock peak, right? Right at 1981, and that's actually the exact same date that MTV came out. And so people do say that MTV killed rock and roll and rock in general. And the research I've done says that MTV became more of a tastemaker in dictating what people should listen to, and this led them to move away from rock because it had been around for just so long that they wanted something new. And so finally, we can also see that we are in an age of a lot of music diversity. Okay, for most of the 20th century, there's always something that was highly, highly prevalent. There's something that just overshadowed everything else. But right now, nothing's really like the music that people listen to. And this could be attributed to online music, people using the internet more to listen to music, making music more of a democratic thing. So this shows just the top 10 filtered, and there's something, so let me zoom. So this only shows percentage of the top 10, not top 100 to 150 for each week. So just something really quick we can notice is that disco is way higher up. So disco takes up 35% as opposed to 15% of the 100%. That sounds really confusing. All that means is that we usually attribute 1975 to 1980 being this disco time, right? But we can see that rock was still way more popular than disco was. So people use the top 10 a lot more to solidify in their minds what the music of that time was. So this is how loud music has been getting. So this is average decibels. So we can confirm the existence of something called the loudness wars. So simply what the loudness wars are is that your ear likes things, just finds music better if it's louder, okay? So this leads to a sort of arms race where someone will race a track and you want to sound better, so you make a louder track. And the other person makes a louder track over and over and over again. And so you end up with this sort of steady increase in volume. And so people have always thought this was a thing, but people would compare two tracks and be like, oh, this is evidence, but we can actually look from a quantitative standpoint and see this trend. And we can see that's not the first time. So when vinyl records first came out, we can see that there was also a loudness wars in the 1940s. It's usually something that we attribute with the modern times, but we can see it exists in the 1940s, sort of plateauing when we reach the limits of the analog medium. And then right around 1980, when CDs come out, we break that analog format, and now the sky's, So notice that there's no plateau yet, okay? That should be scary to everyone, okay? That could potentially keep going up until we reach a much, much higher decibel level. So lyrical sentiment. So what does this mean? How is this even possible? That a computer can understand something like how the lyrics are happy or if the lyrics are sad. You can use machine learning to do this. It's usually used for business applications. So if I have 1,000 reviews on Amazon I want to read, I can just run it through this, and it'll just tell me if these reviews are happy or sad, and so that way I don't have to read all of them, I just get basic data from it. So I'm using this for lyrics. I'm piping lyrics in, getting if the lyrics are happy or sad. So this is what it looks like graphed out. So a 1 is super happy, and a 0 is like the pits of despair. So most pop music is obviously sort of happy, right? Usually, the top 100 isn't just of depressing songs. So I try to correlate this with all sorts of things, with unemployment, GDP, all sorts of things to see why these trends go up and down. And it's not super conclusive, okay? The only one place where I found where it was very conclusive was on 9/11. Songs became dramatically more depressing, and it reached like a low for all time. Like, if you zoom in, you can just see this huge dip. And you don't see that for any other mass tragedy. Like, I looked at the shooting of JFK, and people didn't react as hard. And I don't know if that's just because we live in such a more connected world now, but it's just interesting to note. It takes, my theory is that it takes very large catastrophic events to affect the global psyche in such a way that you see a decrease in lyrical sentiment that hard.
Here, we're gonna have to bring it to a close pretty quick
Okay.
here.
Yeah. So I'll just say one final thing. This just shows how happy songs sound through the seasons. And we can see that in the summer, songs actually sound happier, right? And there's this nice little cycle. So, thank you for coming back.
Yeah, let's have to give our last speaker, Coleman.